My ex-husband and I had 3 children, 25-year-old female, 23-year-old female, and 22-year-old male. We separated 4 years ago after he said he was tired of seeing my old face every day and wanted to find someone younger, his words to my face when asking for a divorce. The divorce was a mess. He tried in every way to take everything I had, and I even had to take on half of his debts. Long story short, I never talked to him again face to face. And we only talk through lawyers when it's something about our children. Months ago, I found out from my children that he was diagnosed with cancer, and it is in an advanced stage. I didn't say anything more about it because any topic related to him doesn't appeal to me. However, I decided to support my children and stay by their side. Yesterday, my 3 children, all live with me, sat down with me and told me that their father could no longer work, chemo plus cancer, and wouldn't be able to stay in his current home. So he had nowhere to live. They would like for him to live here in these last stages. I immediately said no and felt offended that I had even been asked that question, knowing how much he and I dislike each other. They started to argue, saying that our house was his last option because his relatives couldn't help, and they didn't want to leave their father without a home. They wanted me to think about them. I asked who would take care of him when things got worse, since all 3 of them work outside the home and I work from home. I also asked who would cover all of his financial and medical expenses. They didn't know how to answer, and they said they would decide between the 3 of them to help their father and not be so burdensome for me. They insisted that all 3 of them were willing to let their father live in our house. I said that despite valuing their opinion on any other matter in the house, this matter is my decision alone, and my answer remains no. They called me heartless and don't think that they are just trying to give their father a place to live, not my ex-husband. They think I am being petty about all the things he did and not thinking about them. They're still pressuring me to change my mind, especially with their father only having 15 more days in his house, but I can't feel anything other than offended that they asked that, knowing how much the divorce messes with my mental health. Depression and anxiety. My ex got in touch on my personal number, asking to rethink and leave the past behind just in these last moments. Funny that he asked me, but not his ex is much younger than me. Am I the idiot? If you want to know, the oldest is waiting for her own house to be ready, and the 2 youngest are still unable to live alone, and I don't care about them still being at home. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Not the idiot. Not at all. Your children are totally unfair to ask this of you. My ex got in touch on my personal number, asking to rethink and leave the past behind just in these last moments. Funny that he asked me, but not his ex is much younger than me. Probably because he's realized far too late that behind that old face is a good, decent person who's more beautiful than his exes will ever be. His bad, his regret to carry. Stand firm on no being a complete sentence. All the very best to you. Comment 2. Tell him he can ask his much younger and cuter exes. After all, you wouldn't want to bother him with your old face every day. Not the idiot. And do your kids know how he treated you? I understand not getting involved with my parents' grievances, but as a child in that situation, I would never consider even asking my mother to care for my father if I knew how he treated her. ETA, this would be my hill to die on. Now, for the update. Hey everyone. Thanks for all the support on my last post. It's been a busy week, and I've got some updates that I think you'll want to hear. So, after I told my kids no to letting their dad move in, things got pretty tense around here. My oldest, she's always been the peacemaker, tried to smooth things over. She reminded me of how when we were married, my ex would surprise me with little gifts, like that time he got me a necklace for no reason at all. She said people can change, even if it's at the end of their life, but I couldn't forget the bad stuff, like how he'd always put me down in front of his friends, making jokes at my expense. It was like a punch to the gut every time, and it took me years to rebuild my self-esteem after we split. Then, 2 days ago, my middle child dropped a bombshell. She said she'd been talking to her dad and found out he'd been secretly saving money for them, for college and stuff, even when he was being stingy with me during the divorce. I didn't want to believe it, but she showed me the bank statements. I was floored. It didn't change the past, but it made me see him in a different light. Maybe he wasn't all bad, just mostly bad. The next day, my youngest, the boy, came to me. He was angry, saying I was being unfair. He reminded me of how I always taught them to be compassionate, to help others in need. It was like he was throwing my own words back at me, and it stung. I was torn. On one hand, I wanted to stand my ground, On the other, I saw how much this meant to my kids. They were desperate to help their dad, and it was eating me up inside to see them like this. Then, yesterday, my ex showed up at the door. He looked terrible, all pale and thin. He didn't say much, just that he was sorry for everything, and that he understood if I couldn't forgive him. But he hoped I could, for our kids' sake. I didn't know what to say. I just stood there, feeling like I was in some sort of bad dream. And then, out of nowhere, he collapsed. Right there on the front porch. Panic set in. The kids and I rushed to his side, and we called an ambulance. At the hospital, the doctors said it was a close call, but he was stable. They also said he didn't have much time left, maybe a few weeks at most. The kids were a mess. They were crying, holding his hand, telling him they loved him. And I felt something crack inside me. I couldn't just stand by and watch them go through this alone. So, I made a decision. I told the kids their dad could stay with us, just until the end. They were so relieved. They hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. It's been a day since he moved in. It's awkward, and it's hard, seeing him there in the guest room, so weak and vulnerable. It's nothing like the man I once knew, the one who could make me laugh and cry in the same breath. The kids are taking turns caring for him, and I'm helping out where I can. It's not easy, but when I see the gratitude in their eyes, it feels worth it. But here's the twist. Last night, my ex asked to talk to me alone. He told me that he'd made a mistake, that leaving me was the biggest regret of his life. He said he realized too late that the grass wasn't greener, that all those younger women didn't care about him, not like I did. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to scream, to tell him it was too late for apologies. But another part of me, a part I thought was long gone, felt sorry for him. I told him I forgave him. Not for his sake, but for mine, and for our kids. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. So, here we are. My ex-husband, the man who broke my heart, is living in my house, and I'm taking care of him in his final days. It's not what I wanted, but it's what's happening. My fiancé's brother sneaks baby into our child-free wedding. So I confront him, and he makes a toast about family first, but when his wife apologizes and catches the bouquet, we reconcile with laughter. My 31 female and my fiancé, 35 male, are getting married. His brother, 41 male, and his brother's wife, 34 female, are due to have a baby any day now. By the time we get married, the kid will be 7 or 8 months old. We live an hour away from my in-laws, brother, sister, mother, and father. The wedding will be 4 to 5 hours away for all of us. 2 months prior to telling us they were expecting, we had a conversation where, in very clear terms, they told us children are not in our immediate future. At the time, they were living with her parents. She's an only child, and he had switched jobs. So you can imagine we were happy, but also confused, as they went from no kids we aren't ready to, we're cooking up a kid. We are having a child-free wedding. The only exception we've made to this is my future nephew. My fiancé asked his brother to be his best man. My sister-in-law is not involved in any part of the day except to be my brother-in-law's +1. Originally, my mother-in-law said that she would plan my bridal shower with my mom. She casually mentioned to me one day that she didn't have the bandwidth to host my bridal shower, as she will be helping with childcare for my sister-in-law. I don't understand how the two are related, but my mom will plan a perfectly fine bridal shower without my mother-in-law. I pushed my wedding dress shopping date back because my mother-in-law didn't want to spend 2 weekends traveling for dress shopping and a baby shower. My fiancé expected that his brother would plan a bachelor party. Up until recently, the plan was to take an international trip. But now that he will be a father, he won't travel far. My fiancé is not happy about this and has argued that some of the domestic destinations they are selecting are further than some international places. Now that the baby is due to be here any day, my brother-in-law has preemptively requested that we give them access to the bridal suite, the space on site at the venue where we can get ready, refresh, relax, to care for the baby. We were both upset. I am okay with having their child at my wedding because I know how attached parents can be, but I am not okay making accommodations for a child that just as easily could not be at my wedding. My sister-in-law is an only child, so we offered to invite her parents, understanding they would stay at the Airbnb and take care of the baby. They didn't like this option, even though the Airbnb is booked, and I am not exaggerating when I say this. It is around the corner from the venue. We offered them a ceremony-only option, so during cocktail hour, they can leave. They did not like this option. It is clear that the priorities of my fiancé's family have become this child. I do not want to be resentful of this baby or my sister-in-law. Yet, before we've finalized our menu, we are being asked how we can make our wedding comfortable for a baby we didn't expect would be there. Am I the idiot for saying no? You cannot use the amenities that are provided to us as bride and groom to give your kids some milk and a nap. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Absolutely not. No one should be rooting around your bridal suite apart from the bride and groom. My pill tried this with my stepson, wanting to go in our wedding suite to change him. He wasn't a baby, and it was a hard no for me. We wanted to be the first people in there. It was a special us moment, and I wasn't willing to share that. Just say no. They were comfortable communicating their boundaries, then so should your fiancé. If there is blowback, then just say, sorry you feel that way, but the answer is still no, then repeat. Plus, ensure you inform the hotel/wedding coordinator that no one has permission to enter that room. Not the idiot. Comment 2. Not the idiot. If it gets to be too much, you can always tell your sister-in-law that maybe it's best they don't bring the child. Prepare for a shitstorm, weather it out, and when it's all done, you will either find your sister-in-law, and maybe your mother-in-law, will boycott your wedding, or they will be grateful that you're willing to relent and allow them to bring the child at all. Just remember, it's not your mom and sister, it's your soon-to-be husbands. Let him worry about their relationship. You worry about your boundaries, and not letting his family walk all over you. Now for the update. Hey Reddit, it's been 3 months since I last posted about my wedding drama, and oh boy, do I have an update for you. Buckle up, because things got wild. So, after my last post, things seemed to calm down a bit. My fiancé and I were busy with wedding prep, and my brother-in-law and sister-in-law were all about their new baby. The little guy arrived, and he was cute as a button. We thought maybe, just maybe, things would smooth over. But then, 2 weeks before the wedding, my sister-in-law dropped a bombshell. She announced that she was going to be the maid of honor at her best friend's wedding, which was on the same day as ours. We were blindsided. How could she commit to 2 weddings at once? Turns out, her best friend had a last-minute elopement plan, and my sister-in-law just couldn't say no. This meant that my brother-in-law was now solo for our big day, with baby in tow. And guess what? He still wanted access to the bridal suite for the baby. My fiancé and I were fuming. We had already made so many concessions, and now this. The week of the wedding, things got even more heated. My mother-in-law, who had been distant since the bridal shower fiasco, suddenly wanted to be involved again. She insisted on coming to the final dress fitting, which was awkward, to say the least. She kept making comments about how the dress should be more baby-friendly, since I'd be holding my nephew at some point. I couldn't believe it. Then, the night before the wedding, at the rehearsal dinner, my brother-in-law made a toast. He started off sweet, talking about family and love. But then he took a turn and started ranting about how family should always come first, and how we should be more accommodating to his new family situation. The room went silent. My fiancé stood up, thanked him for his words, but firmly stated that our wedding day was about us, not about making everyone else comfortable. The day of the wedding arrived, and it was beautiful. The ceremony went off without a hitch, and my nephew was an angel throughout. But during the reception, my brother-in-law disappeared for a while. We found him in the bridal suite, baby on the bed, napping. He had somehow convinced one of the venue staff to let him in. My fiancé was livid. They had a huge confrontation right there in the hallway. Voices were raised, and my brother-in-law finally stormed off, baby in arms, and left the wedding early. But here's the twist. Reddit. After they left, my sister-in-law showed up. She had ditched her best friend's elopement after realizing she wanted to be at our wedding more. She was in tears, apologizing for everything. She explained that she had been feeling overwhelmed with the new baby and her friend's demands and had made a mistake. We were all in shock, but decided to let bygones be bygones and welcomed her to the party. The rest of the night was a blur of dancing, laughter, and a few too many drinks. My sister-in-law ended up catching the bouquet, which was ironic and kind of perfect in its own way. My stepdaughter dumps her baby on me to become a doctor, and now sues for custody playing the victim, but the judge sees right through her lies, and I keep my grandson. Hi, I'm 54 years old. I married my husband when he was 41 and I was 38. He had a 12-year-old daughter who I got along with well, but we were never very close because she visited her mom often. I'll call her Tina. When Tina was 16 years old, my husband passed away suddenly. She could have gone and lived with her mom, but her mom lives a few hours away and she would have had to switch schools in her junior year, so she decided to just stay at home with me. We did become closer then, as we had to get through this together, but she still didn't think of me as a mom, which I totally understand. Tina was planning to go to medical school, but she got pregnant in her senior year. She wasn't even dating the guy. As far as I know, she got drunk, and it happened. She pushed through and graduated on time though, but then once her son was born, she asked me if I would take care of him so she could go to medical school. I didn't even think it a burden, because when I was younger, I couldn't have a child of my own, and I was happy to have the chance to raise one. So she moved states and went to college, and first I was calling her weekly to tell her what was going on with her child. But she never called, and slowly I stopped calling. She never called on her own, or seemed to show any interest. When I told her, she just listened politely, but I got the sense that she was just moving on in life, and not really thinking about her son. I still called her every few months for the first few years, but then that faded too. Now her son is 9 years old. She just finished the 8 years of med school. I think of her son as mine, and he calls me grandma, even though we're not biologically related. About his biological parents, I told him that everyone has 2 sets of parents, the ones that created the baby he was, and the ones that helped create the adult he would be. I said that for some people, these were the same, and for some people they weren't. I didn't want to straight up tell him his mom didn't care, but I also didn't want to lie. He accepted this, even though the lack of real parents obviously had an impact. Recently, Tina reached out saying she wants to get to know her son. She came to visit and stayed for a few days. It was so incredibly awkward. I told my son she would be coming, and when she came, she asked him if he knew who she was. He said yes. You gave birth to me, but you're not my real mom. Then he basically ignored her the whole time. She was really angry with me and accused me of turning him against her, and I don't know if I should have done something differently. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Not the idiot, but I'm worried for you and your son. As others have said, document as much as you can. Did Tina ever come visit? Was she taking classes all year or summers off? What did she do during summers off? Has she ever given you money for support? Definitely apply for legal custody as soon as possible. If Tina wants to see him, make it court-ordered and regulated. Comment 2. Not the idiot. Tell her that it's difficult to promote a long-distance relationship between a parent and child when the mother abandons the kid for 9 years. She is the reason he doesn't know her. He's made up his own mind who his mother is. 90% of what's needed to be a good parent is turning up and being present. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, back with an update on the situation with my stepdaughter Tina and her son, my grandson. It's been a tense couple of weeks since I last posted, and things have taken some unexpected turns. First off, let me give you a bit of background on Tina's relationship with her biological mother. Her mom wasn't exactly the nurturing type, and that's putting it mildly. She was more interested in her social life than in being a parent, which is one reason why Tina ended up living with her dad and me. So, when Tina got pregnant, her mom was the last person she wanted to turn to for help. Now, fast forward to the present. After Tina's awkward visit, she decided she wasn't going to take her son's cold reception lying down. She started calling more often, trying to insert herself into his life. She even went as far as enrolling him in a soccer league behind my back, which caused a huge stir when I found out. I mean, I'm his legal guardian, and she didn't even think to consult me. But here's where things get really heated. Tina's mom, who had been out of the picture for years, suddenly showed up. Apparently, Tina had reached out to her, and they'd been secretly rebuilding their relationship. Her mom swooped in, acting like the doting grandmother, buying gifts and taking my grandson out for ice cream. It felt like a slap in the face, considering how she'd neglected Tina all those years. The injustice of it all hit me hard. Here I was, having raised this boy for nearly a decade, and suddenly I was being pushed aside by the very people who had abandoned him. Tina and her mom were acting like they could just waltz back into his life and take over. It was infuriating. But the real jaw-dropper came when Tina announced she was suing for full custody. She claimed that I had been alienating her from her son, and that it was in his best interest to live with her now that she was a doctor and could provide for him. The nerve of her, after all these years of silence. The court date was set, and I was a bundle of nerves. I had to dig up old emails and messages, anything that showed how little interest Tina had shown in her son's life. It was heart-wrenching to go through all that history, to see the years of one-sided communication laid bare. When the day came, the confrontation in court was intense. Tina's lawyer painted her as a dedicated mother who had been kept from her son by a vindictive stepmother. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I wanted to scream that it was me who had been there for every scraped knee, every bedtime story, every parent-teacher conference. Then, my grandson was asked to speak. He stood there, this little 9-year-old boy, and told the judge about his life with me. He talked about how I was the one who made him pancakes on Sundays, who helped him with his homework, who cheered the loudest at his Little League games. He said he wanted things to stay as they were. I was so proud of him, but also heartbroken that he had to go through this. In the end, the judge ruled in my favor. Tina was granted visitation rights, but I retained custody. It was a relief, but the whole ordeal left a bitter taste in my mouth. Tina stormed out of the courtroom, and her mother followed, throwing me a look that could curdle milk. Since then, things have been tense. Tina's visits are stiff and formal, and my grandson is polite but distant with her. I can't help but worry about the long-term effects this will have on him. He's a smart kid, and he knows when he's being treated like a pawn in a game of chess. If you liked this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.